I grew up on a farm. Natural and man-made textures and decay are part of the environment. I work with handmade paper, vintage fabrics, and remnants. Imperfection, abjectness, and roughness coinciding with beauty and a humble elegance are my main goals. Accidental, awkward-looking elements are important to me. Becoming an artist was a long process where one thing led to another due to the desire to create and praise for my talent. So I thought maybe I will be an artist one day. But I come from the working class in a rural environment, so I did not have any idea of what to do or how to get there, or anyone to show the way forward. I have several bodies of work, including acrylic painting, but I'm on a break from that until I get more space for storage. What is important here is the materiality of the work without reference to imaginary space. I partially disengaged my will in order to allow the painting to manifest in a natural, organic build of thick layers. Currently, I work with textiles and paper. When I see my paperwork next to the paintings and textiles, I see the same obsession with texture and physicality. I am very detail-oriented, so the smallest aspect of my work is paid attention to, and I enjoy this very much. It's difficult for me to work simply and minimally. I began to work with textiles and paper due to a lack of storage space for my paintings. I also wanted to get away from using environmentally and personally damaging art materials, which seems pretty impossible to do. Even textiles have their own environmental issues, so I try to use fabric that already has had a life. I am influenced by Japanese buro and Chinese guba. Buro is patch clothing and blankets that often were used for generations. Guba is ephemeral, anonymous fabric collage. The main creators of guba were peasants who live in the countryside. Their creations are objects of everyday life, which were mostly thrown away. It took me 7 years to complete college for a number of reasons, both financial and personal. I took a couple years off and moved to Boulder, Colorado. I traveled to North Africa and Europe for 8 months with 2 friends. That trip was incredible as my first time out of the U.S., and I've loved traveling to other cultures ever since. I graduated from the School of Visual Arts in New York City with honors. I studied sculpture with Alice Aycock and advisors Elizabeth Murray and Judy Pfaff. Afterwards, I moved to Dumbo to a loft in 1982. I was interested in installation art that used architectural and domestic elements such as shelves or stairs built with wood and painted. I lived in a succession of ever smaller loft spaces as prices increased, affecting the art I made. My sculptures became flatter and more wall-bound. It was the 80s and I was reading post-structuralist theory. I didn't completely understand it all, but some of it was interesting. However, it did not inspire me to make art at all. I stopped making art for 7 years. Then I decided to study oil painting at the Art Students League of New York. I began to make larger paintings inspired by aerial photos of urban areas and also more fantasy-based work like Deep Dive Here. My work became completely abstract after this painting. Physicality, immediacy, imperfection, and randomness are the qualities I seek with paper, textile, or paint. In between the oil painting phase and now is a mixed media phase that often had 3D surfaces. A need for experimentation is what impels me to create. In order to land somewhere surprising, you have to let go of directing. Working with paper is a very similar process to working with textiles. Shapes are arranged to a point that has promise, then glued or sewn down. Work continues on top of that, either with more shapes, paint, sewing, or embellishment. Paperwork is just much faster than textile, but both are very messy. When I was young, I had the luck of being invited into Jory Graham's poetry workshop. She had a theory that to perfect your writing, move towards your opposite inclination, which was either the emotional/intellectual or spiritual/physical. I was advised to move toward the physical. I've realized that this is what I'm doing with my art now. In 2018, I was invited by John Davis Gallery in Hudson, New York to have a solo show the following year. I expanded my Distopoulos series of paintings during that time, but the show became more of a survey from several bodies of work. Many artists I admire were part of this gallery. I was very happy to have had the opportunity. This was one of my first hanging textile pieces from 2018. It won an award in the Relishing Restraint show at Loft Artists Gallery in Stamford, Connecticut. The piecing together of used kimono silks was influenced by buro textiles. Sometimes the silks have stains or tears, and I like this evidence of use and wear. I worked on the floor to piece this together. This is my studio space in the Bronx today, much smaller than any of my loft spaces. It is in our apartment. It takes about 10 minutes for it to look like a tornado passed through when I am working. However, I like the accidental juxtaposition of materials that occur when things are not ordered, and that can inspire me. I like to use scraps as I find them. This is The Return. I made this early in 2020. I was drawn to saying something with random stitching, awkward stitching, inadequate stitching. The piece references nature, dilapidation, and failed attempts at repair. The use of burlap and faux fur always alludes to my roots. My dad was a trapper and a hunter, among other things. We left the Bronx due to the pandemic and rented a small cabin in Stowe, Vermont for a couple months. I brought art supplies that half filled our car. Cabin fever was made there. I was working with a lot of embroidery detail at the time, perhaps a response to the feeling of being tightly wound into a shrinking world. I am interested in experimenting more with rust dyeing, burning fabric, erasing fabric design with bleach, and three-dimensional paper. I try different things, and if they're not for me, they fall away. And some things I try I have to wait to grow into. You can try different things, but the way forward has to be true for you. My identity as an artist is not around the medium I use, but around who I am and the directions and investigations I make. I would never claim I was a painter or collagist or textile artist. I am an artist, period. I am inspired by many things: nature, decay, materials, methods, and other artists. Here I am experimenting with a burn tool.